Hi, I'm John Bertzese. Does anyone know what this is? Right in front. Right. We think of it as a delicious fruit. But for third world nations, this is a cash crop. When they're forced to open their trade barriers and multinationals and other larger countries come in, they take over their usual traditional sources of farming. So they need to export things such as cash crops, sugar, watermelons, just to make a living. So today I will be talking about how globalization of free trade affects the economies and peoples of third world nations, using Jamaica as an example. So globalization is a little cliche, right? It means a lot of things. But basically, in an economic sense, it's the increased worldwide integration of markets for goods, services, labor, and capital. It's trade between nations. So picture this. You're a third world country. You have no money, and your people need medicine or something very basic. And banks won't lend you money because you're high risk. What you do is you turn to the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank. They'll lend you the money on the condition of interest, and you agree to a structural adjustment program. So what this does is, they believe that through this, you can have enough liquid cash to pay your debt and also stimulate your economy through import-export. So the structural adjustment program, there are certain elements. You cut social spending and increase interest rates. It allows a lot of liquid cash, so this way you can pay back your debt. You eliminate tariffs on imported goods. You eliminate or cut back government subsidies, so your goods become more available to others, cheaper. You reorient economics from subsistence to exports, and you eliminate regulations on foreign ownership. This way, you have a good import-export, and you're allowed, and it stimulates your economy. So, like I said before, the IMF and the SAP's goal is to liberate capital through cutbacks, reduce trade barriers to stimulate import-export, and promote foreign investment. Technically, it should be beneficial for both sides. But there's a little bit of a problem. The IMF only allows for short-term debt financing at high interest rates, instead of allowing long-term debt financing or development for programs for third world countries. So it's only a temporary solution, and when this fails, they have to take out another loan, and this incurs more debt, and so on. So, and with the SAPs, the structural adjustment programs, there's a sort of drawback. When you have cuts in government spending, you have cuts in health and education. Local farmers and businesses can't afford loans when you increase interest rates, so there becomes a lot of poverty and joblessness. Now, when you reduce trade barriers and open up your economy, small businesses have to compete with large multinationals, right? And they can produce the same goods for a lot less. So it creates a society which is highly dependent on imports, and they only export a few things. So farmers produce cash crops instead of necessities, so you're moving from subsistence to exports, but you're importing all your basic needs, and you're only exporting a bit, so this creates more debt, loss of jobs, and poverty. So right now I'll use Jamaica as an example of what the IMF and SAPs can happen when it goes wrong. In 1962, Jamaica achieved their independence, but they weren't economically self-sufficient. So in 1973, when oil prices skyrocketed, they couldn't support their basic needs. They needed penicillin. So in 1977, they had to sign their first IMF agreement. This undoubtedly failed because of various reasons. Obviously, a lot of imports, not enough exports. So in the 1970s, Jamaica owed $800 million. But today that total comes to close to $7 billion. 52 cents out of every dollar is paid in interest payments alone to the IMF. The agriculture was once a thriving part of Jamaica's economy. There used to be subsistence farming, but when there was a reduction of trade barriers, there was an influx of cheaper fruits and vegetables from the Americas, from Europe, and multinationals. So it didn't become viable to do subsistence farming anymore. American carrots, Canadian potatoes just saturated the market. So then they had to create cash crops for melons, sugar, coffee. The farming industry was ruined. The imports far exceeded their exports. Another industry was milk. Got milk? So when the fresh milk industry used to be also a big part of Jamaican economy, but the powdered US milk came in and was subsidized by the American government by 137%. The fresh milk sector just couldn't support this. So basically now everyone in Jamaica uses powdered milk because it's cheaper, even though it's unfairly subsidized. So only when milk powder reaches its unsubsidized price will the Jamaican milk market prosper again. Other markets, same thing with meat, frozen meats, cheap meats.
John, you have to get to your conclusion, please.
Yeah, dark meat. All just influxed into the economy. American multinationals can produce bananas cheaper in South America than the Jamaican, $5 for 40 pounds, while the Jamaicans, $11 for 40 pounds. The result, 45,000 to 5,000 is what banana producers have reduced to in the recent years. So it was a change in traditional Jamaican economy, unfair competition with large multinationals, and the economy is highly dependent on imports compared to exports. Jamaica now has limited options, struggling with massive debt, unemployment, poverty, and high crime rates. So in conclusion, although the International Monetary Fund and structural adjustment programs are supposed to benefit both sides, it undoubtedly only benefits the large multinationals and larger American and so on, and larger countries in the Americas. Like former Prime Minister Michael Manley used to say, the flow of goods and resources like the Mississippi, it only benefits one side, flows downwards, one way. So the next time you're enjoying your juicy watermelon or having your morning espresso, think about the implications. Thank you.